your Tundra potentially could catch on fire, and that was actually caused from the fuel line. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we got a 2022 Tundra here. We're going to go over some of the common issues that we've seen on the Gen 3 Tundra. That's the 2022 to 2025 model. There was many issues in the 2022, a few in the 23, but by the 25 they've kind of gotten worked out. So today we're going to kind of break down some of the issues that could have been TSBs, recalls, or just common things that we've seen in the dealership. Later on in the video, I'll give you my opinion if I was in the market to buy a Tundra, what I would be looking for. The first few things we'll go over are some things that were just fixed with software updates. These ones are actually covered under TSBs. We had some lane trace malfunctions, abnormal fuel, oil pressure readings on the gauge cluster, issues with the SRS light turning on when you were charging your phone with the wireless charger. This was just a slight interference causing the SRS light to come on. Issues with the electronic power steering, throwing an information light on the dash. Some Tundras have had pop or clunk noise on initial startup, and we've had quite a few over the 2022 to 2025 generation Tundra with radios. A lot of different software updates depending on what style radio you have. If you own a Tundra, why don't you leave a comment down below and let people know how you're liking your Tundra, whether you're having lots of issues, you love it, just let us know down in the comments. So now we'll move into some software updates that were covered under recalls. We had the panoramic view monitoring issue. That's a 360 view of the Tundra. Those were having issues. Electronic parking brake, some engine ECU updates. We had issues with the transmission. Potentially the vehicle could roll forward or backwards while you were neutral. And we also had issues with the combo meter going blank while driving down the road. These were all issues that were easily fixed with just software updates. Okay, so now we'll move into some TSBs that pertain to the Tundra, third generation Tundra, 22 to 25, and these were all TSBs that would Toyota came out with fixes that actually require parts to be replaced. The first one that we've seen a lot of is the Tundra front seat cushion, the side shield cracking when right there where it mounts to the frame was a weak spot, and as you put weight on it getting in and out of the vehicle, you could crack the seat plastic. So Toyota came out with an updated seat trim plastic, and all we do is pull that plastic off, swap over the control if it's a power seat, and install your new seat trim. Quite a few Tundras from 20 to some 25s I've seen have a wind noise from the mirrors. It gives you a whistling at highway speeds. Toyota came out with a repair kit to remove this lower trim piece on your mirror and install a foam piece there, and that helps with wind getting in between those little bezels and causing a whistling noise. Next, we had issues with the front brakes squeaking super loud early in the morning. Sometimes it would happen all day. Toyota came out with a repair kit for these front brakes that we replaced the rotors, brake pads, and the shims. We apply a little bit of grease to the calipers, and that has helped prevent any squeaks in the future. Some Tundras have had issues of lack of power on acceleration. Toyota's deemed this as a fuel line. They came out with a repair kit to replace the fuel line. Some early 2022 model Tundras were having a howl noise at highway speeds, and they found that what was going on is when the vehicle was at highway speeds, wind going under the vehicle was echoing through some holes in the lower control arm. Toyota came out with a repair kit, and all it is a couple plugs that will plug up some holes that are in your lower control arms. Those came standard on some of the newer Tundras, so that was more just the early 22s. Next, inside the vehicle, we had issues with the radio power knob falling off. This came down to the way they manufactured the power knob. The plastic was just too thin, and so over moving back and forth, it could crack and end up falling off. Toyota came out with an updated power knob that's got thicker plastic, and so when it clips on, it will hold on better, so it's less likely for that power knob to fall off. Some people were having issues with both front seats making a squeaking noise while driving, going over bumpy roads, and Toyota found that there's some pieces in there that are rubbing against each other. So we'll end up taking your front seats apart and installing these little trim pieces that will prevent the seats from squeaking. Some people in colder climates were having issues of their Tundra not starting or hard to start. This is climates where you're going to get down -4 or below, and Toyota came out with an updated starter solenoid for those locations. We don't have a lot of those in the Pacific Northwest getting that cold, so I've not personally seen this issue. But if you're up north or in a cold climate that you're seeing those temperatures, you may need to update your starter solenoid. So next we're going to go over some recalls, and to start we're going to go over the axle recall. What it was is the axle nuts weren't torqued properly at the factory, and so they could back off while driving. So for the recall, for the most part, we're checking to make sure the nuts are there and checking the torque. If the axle has fallen off, Toyota will actually replace the whole axle housing and anything that's damaged. The ones that were factory equipped with the tonneau cover, they were having issues where the tonneau cover would pop off when driving down the road. Toyota came out with a recall, which was like a hardware kit. So what we did is drilled a couple holes and added new bolts to the tonneau cover to help secure it to the Tundra. Your Tundra potentially could catch on fire, and that was actually caused from the fuel line. The fuel line was not mounted securely from the factory, and it could rub through on the metal ring on the top of the fuel tank. So Toyota came out with a recall, and that recall consists of replacing that fuel line with an updated one and installing a few clips to make sure that fuel line's secure. If the fuel line rubbed through, it could leak fuel onto your exhaust system and potentially cause a fire. Next, we're going to go over the most common one that people know of is the engine issue. This was big in the news, and a lot of people heard about this one. That actually came down to the assembly line, the machining of the block. Not all the machining material was taken out of the oil passages, and when the vehicle was started, that metal went through the whole engine, and it could potentially cause your engine to knock or stall at highway speeds. So Toyota came out with a recall, and we replace your engine. We'll replace it with a complete new engine from oil pan to valve cover. Anything the oil touched gets replaced. We will pull your engine and install a new engine that Toyota sends us in a crate, and we'll swap over the wire harness. Pretty much everything on the engine gets replaced. We're starting to see some issues with reverse lamps not working. Toyota's coming out with a recall right now to replace the tail light housings, and that's on the 2022 to 2025 model. If you guys are finding any of this information helpful so far, please leave a like and share to other people. Now we're going to go over some known issues with the Tundra that we've seen in our shop that are not covered under recall or a TSB. So first we'll start with the coolant leak on the hybrids. This was on the 22 hybrid. They had a coolant leak from the cylinder head that came down to a freeze plug not pressed in correctly. So what we have to do is we'll pull your engine and fully disassemble it and replace that cylinder head. That freeze plug wasn't pressed in correctly at the factory, and so the only way to fix that is replace the whole cylinder. If you're not under warranty, that could be an expensive repair. When the 22 came out, we had a few come into our dealership that had harsh shifting. We did some testing and had Toyota involved and did some inspections and found that these few that we've had were internal failures in the transmission. So Toyota came out and told us that we're just going to replace the transmission. Toyota doesn't rebuild transmissions very often, so most of the time, if we have an internal transmission issue, we're going to replace your whole transmission. On some of the early 22 models, they had turbo issues, and that came down to the wastegate not machined correctly. And Toyota found that problem, and instead of just replacing the part, we actually replaced the whole turbo on those vehicles. A lot of these were fixed early on, so we don't really see a lot of these turbo issues anymore. Some people are having issues on their power tailgates not working properly, and so we looked into this and found that it's the actual strut rod for the power tailgate that's causing the issue. Some of the early 22s were having issues with fit and finish on the trim pieces not fitting correctly. A lot of times that was just us popping it back in and sending the vehicle on their way. Sometimes we'd have to send them to the body shop and actually have them painted and then reassembled. If you guys own a Tundra and you are seeing issues that I did not go over today in this video, please leave a comment down below letting people know what you're seeing out there. So if I were in the market to buy a Tundra, I would probably stick away from the 2022 and early 23 due to all the issues they had. I would highly recommend sticking away from the early model 2022 hybrid due to that coolant leak. If you were to have that coolant leak, that could cost you a lot of money. So if you went with the 2022 or early 23, I would highly recommend getting an extended warranty. If I were to buy one, I would probably buy a late model 2024 or a 25. By the 25, they've had little issues. Most of that stuff has been worked out in the past year. Soon the 26 will be out, so that is also an option that you might want to wait for the 26 to come out. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time.